Talk boxing news.
So I don't really be trying to like I really be trying to hurt my opponents, like, for real. So that's why I don't like people. Somebody asked me about an interview yesterday. They were saying like, why you don't like beef with people and stuff? Because I don't want to, bro. Because like, listen, when I fight people, I really want to hurt you. Like, I really do. Like, I really want to hurt them. So like Tio talking shit, and like I'm cool. I'm a little cool with Tio, bro. Like, you know, me and Tio them been in the same room together and all that stuff, you know. But I really feel like I hurt him, like, and hurt him bad to where like he'll really be messed up, like, for real. Like, he's going to the hospital type of shit. But
that was newly crowned WBC super lightweight champion Regis Prograis addressing the possibility of a Teofimo Lopez fight and what he thinks would happen. Teofimo, who after Regis Prograis' fight this past weekend left comment on his social media stating, "You need to teach me how to be that slow. Oh my, I can't wait to eat next year."
Regis Prograis has since addressed the possibility of the two men sharing the ring. And, you know, he said what you expect him to say, what you'd expect to hear.
Should we expect to see Regis Prograis and Teofimo Lopez in the ring next year? Is that a possibility? Well, it's too soon to tell. We don't know where Regis is going to go now that he's a two-time super lightweight champion, though I must admit, I'd love to see the fight.
Sooner than later.
Timing is everything when it comes to this matchup. Timing is of the utmost importance because there's a sizable age gap between Regis Prograis and Teofimo Lopez. You know, Regis Prograis, he ain't JV the way Teofimo is. He's a grown man.
Yeah, Regis is about 8 years older than Teofimo.
Battle-tested in the super lightweight division. Both men have the same number of losses, just one loss apiece. One loss in Regis' record and one loss in Teofimo's, though I will admit, Regis Prograis' one loss, his lone defeat to Josh Taylor, that was a much more competitive fight, and he put up
a better fight in what was a 50-50 fight going into it.
You know, Prograis versus Taylor is not an adequate parallel for Teofimo Lopez's fight with George Kambosos. Going into that fight, Teofimo Lopez was the significant favorite, the betting favorite with the bookies. He was expected to win that fight.
Whereas with Regis and Tosh Jailer, you know, that was a pick'em fight. That was a 50-50 fight that could go either way. Both men strong punchers and great boxers. I mean,
they were both unbeaten champions in their prime at that time. In their prime going into the match.
Regis Prograis has battled the Lions and the Tigers and the Bears in the super lightweight division, a naturally bigger man, and I'd wager a bigger puncher than Teofimo Lopez, even if Teofimo is younger, and even if he does have a speed advantage. I don't know that he's as durable here today as Regis Prograis.
What's the biggest testament to Teofimo's durability as a fighter? What he can take. He got sat on his back pocket by George Kambosos down there at lightweight. If Regis were to land clean on this guy, what do you think might happen? Regis Prograis just battered one of the better fighters in the super lightweight division in Chong Sepada.
He fucking stopped him.
He battered Terry Flanagan. He stopped then WBA champion Kirill Rillick, and more recently, he stopped Chong Sepada. That's the testament to his handiwork at 140 pounds. What's the testament to Teofimo?
What's he done at 140 pounds? Because this ain't lightweight.
The guys are bigger, more durable, they punch harder.
There are similarities between Teofimo Lopez and Regis Prograis. Both guys are slicksters, counterpunchers that use a shell guard.
They both do. They have their slight differences and nuances. To the eye, Teofimo does look a little faster than Regis Prograis, perhaps a little bit more explosive, though not necessarily as destructive. I'd wager that Regis Prograis can take more of what Teofimo has here today than Teofimo can take what Regis has got, what Regis is packing. Though I reiterate, timing when it comes to this fight is of the utmost importance due to the 8-year age gap between them.
The sooner it happens, the sooner it goes down, the more it favors Regis Prograis.
But the longer the fight takes to make, the more it favors the younger, fresher fighter. Teofimo has many good years ahead of him because he's only 25 years old.
So yeah, timing is pretty important when the fight happens, if the fight happens at all.
They're both slicksters, they're both counterpunchers, but Teofimo, he's an orthodox fighter. Regis Prograis, he's a southpaw.
I think Teofimo is a bit quicker to the draw, but he's not as prolific a puncher as Regis Prograis and not as much of a jabber.
There are lulls in the action in Teofimo's fights. There are quiet moments, at least more to the eye than there are in Regis Prograis' fights. Regis is a jabber. He does employ the lead hand quite often.
He's not an outside jabber. He's not an outside fighter. They both got the same sweet spot. That's mid-range to inside. But Regis to the eye, he just seems busier than Teofimo. Teofimo's a bit more reliant on the big counter shot, the big counter punch.
In terms of shot selection, I'd give Regis Prograis that edge as well.
That's what he's throwing, where he's throwing it, and where.
I think the sooner the fight happens, the more it favors Regis Prograis.
What I think, but it might all be much ado about nothing because we really don't know where Regis is going to go now that he has become WBC champion. We don't know that he's going to go to Top Rank, and if he doesn't, you can kiss that.
Top Rank's got plenty of fighters and plenty of fights they can make to keep Teofimo Lopez busy, irrespective of a Prograis fight. As scintillating and titillating as that fight might be, it is contingent upon where Regis goes and who he does business with moving forward.
And we don't yet know what he's going to do. We don't know where we can expect to see him fight next, under what banner.
If he goes to Top Rank, a Lopez fight is there. Potential Haney fight if Haney beats Lomachenko and moves up in weight, decides to move up in weight. A rematch with Tosh Jailer.
A Jose Ramirez fight.
We've just got to wait and see where Regis decides to go next. In men's light heavyweight news, Callum Smith says that he's open to a domestic clash with Joshua Buatsi before challenging Beterbiev versus Yard winner Callum Smith, who could stand to be a bit busier. You know, it seems like we don't see this guy often enough, but when we do see him, he reminds us how formidable he is. His big knockout of Lenin Castillo.
His more recent knockout of former Olympian Matthew Bauderleek in that WBC final eliminator.
Former world super middleweight champion Liverpool's Callum Smith told IFL TV that he is open to considering an offer to fight unbeaten domestic rival Joshua Buatsi. That would be an in-house fight as they're both matchroom fighters that box on the DAZN platform. Smith is the WBC's mandatory challenger at 175 pounds and is guaranteed the winner of Artur Beterbiev versus Anthony Yard, which takes place on January 28th in Wembley, with no exceptions.
You think this might be too much too soon for Joshua Buatsi?
No, I don't. I think this opportunity for Joshua Buatsi has arrived right on time. Even if I don't like his chances against Callum Smith, the only place to go is up for him. He's already fought Craig Richards in a domestic level fight. This is world level.
Callum Smith is a former world champion, and he's a world-class fighter. That's what he is. That's the kind of guy that Joshua Buatsi needs to be fighting at this point.
Joshua Buatsi had previously told boxing media that their promoters, Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing, had proposed a fight between them. Representatives of Smith's management, STN Sports, indicated that a Smith versus Buatsi fight was unlikely to occur. Nevertheless, Smith has now revealed he is willing to risk his shot in a battle with Buatsi.
Callum Smith, he needs to be busier. He's been fighting once a year for the last 3 years, and I don't think it's due to a lack of opportunity. I think it's due to a lack of trying. Matchroom has staged many shows that he could have boxed on.
I want to fight before the Beterbiev versus Yard winner. If his team wants to make me an offer, it's an offer I'll consider. I haven't had any offers. I want to fight in March. And then roll into the world title. Smith told IFL TV that he wants to return in March before facing the Beterbiev Yard winner. Hearn confirmed via Twitter yesterday that Matchroom would be staging a show in Liverpool on March 11th.
Which is likely to be Smith.
Callum's last fight was in August of this year, and if he is to take on the winner of Beterbiev versus Yard as that fighter's mandatory challenger, he doesn't want to have to shake off ring rust in that fight, thus returning in the first or second quarter ahead of that title fight. It's a necessity, whether it's against Joshua Buatsi or someone else.
It's going to be an interesting situation if Callum Smith makes it to that mandatory title defense, irrespective of who the champion is, whether it's Artur Beterbiev or Anthony Yard, should Anthony upset Artur.
It's going to be an interesting situation because it more or less forces both Matchroom and Top Rank to come to the proverbial table in order to strike a deal that would see the fight happen.
I know what you're thinking. If both Matchroom and Top Rank are going to come to the table to do a fight at light heavyweight, why not do the fucking Bivol fight?
The Dmitry Bivol versus the potential Artur Beterbiev undisputed light heavyweight title fight. If any fight at 175 pounds should force both those promotional outfits to come to the table, shouldn't it be that one? Well, ideally, it would, but you can't force those guys to do that fight. Whereas this fight between Callum Smith and the winner of Beterbiev versus Yard, this is mandated. He's a mandatory challenger, thus they have to reach a deal.
Reconciliation is required, whether both promoters like it or not. Top Rank in particular, that would likely rather not do any business with Matchroom and don't want to have to send any of their fighters to that platform, but something's got to give.
Something's got to happen. In any event, Callum Smith stated quite plainly that he's willing to take on Joshua Buatsi in the mean in-between time, and whether Joshua Buatsi is receptive to such a fight or not, either way, Callum Smith's got to get out there ahead of his mandated title shot. I don't know that Joshua and his people are receptive to this idea.
But you know what? He's a former Olympian. It's time to get off the pot.
Should get off the pot in the sense that, Anthony Yard, he don't come from the same kind of amateur background as Joshua Buatsi. He doesn't have the same kind of amateur pedigree. Yet he's coming up on his second world title shot. His second world title attempt. You would think that Joshua Buatsi, given his amateur background, would be in a more advanced stage of his career. They're not even asking you to fight an Artur or a Dmitry. They're asking you to fight Callum.
How the hell are you ever going to be ready for those guys? Guys like Artur and guys like Dmitry, if you're getting cold feet about fighting Callum.
Not even saying that he is getting cold feet, but if he were to reject this proposition, if he were to reject this idea, one is left to wonder, what's he going to do moving forward? Who's he going to fight? If you're not ready for the Callum Smiths of the world, you're never going to be ready for the Dimitrys and the Arturs.
If he don't fight Callum, can you at least get him in there with a Joe Smith Jr.?
Something's got to happen. Something's got to give. I very much like the idea of Smith versus Buatsi as an in-between fight, a keep busy fight for Callum, and a proving ground for Joshua Buatsi. I will admit that I favor Callum to win the fight, so let's just get that right out of the way. I feel that Joshua Buatsi, he's got a good jab and he's a strong puncher, but he's not busy enough.
And I don't trust his punch resistance. I don't know that he's all that durable. He hasn't really been chin-checked yet.
Whereas with Callum, we can at least say that he's been there and done that with a decent-sized puncher and a champion in George Groves. He went 12 rounds with Canelo Alvarez at super middleweight. Unlike Billy Joe Saunders, unlike Caleb Plant,
Callum Smith was at least durable enough to hear the final bell in that fight with Canelo. He has since moved up in weight and he's looked strong, looked sharp, looked like a world beater at light heavyweight.
Whereas when it comes to Joshua Buatsi, there are still one or two unanswered questions, and hopefully we can get the answers to those questions if Joshua decides to take this fight. And let's see if he does. And finally, in men's heavyweight news, ahead of his upcoming trilogy fight with his old buddy Derek Chisora, Tyson Fury, on people pointing to his fight with Steve Cunningham as a reason why Alexander Usyk could trouble him, Tyson says, I think Steve Cunningham was probably a better fighter than Alexander Usyk. That's just my opinion. I think Steve would have battered him, and it's funny that Tyson is saying this because Steve Cunningham himself thinks Usyk has the edge over you.
Year, I believe it was in August, Steve Cunningham himself was asked about the fight with Fury and Usyk, and he's going with Usyk to win a points decision over Tyson Fury.
A few weeks ago, I vaguely recall Tyson Fury making some mention of how Alexander Usyk looked opposite the ring, Derek Chisora. He said Derek gave him a lot of problems. I think he said in his own opinion, he felt that Derek beat Alexander Usyk. And if we're supposed to judge Usyk based on the Chisora fight, we could turn right around and judge you based on the Otto Valine fight, or the...
He didn't look too hot in that fight.
If that's the kind of logic that we're going to employ, the pendulum swings both ways. Should we judge Tyson Fury based on the Nevin Pajcik fight many years ago, where he was dropped by Nevin Pajcik? Should we judge Tyson Fury based on the John McDermott fight? You know the one where everybody said he got a gift, he should have lost.
People were screaming that was a highway robbery, at least the first fight.
So, should we judge Tyson Fury Fury here today based on that? Should we judge him based on the McDermott fight, the knockdown in the Pajcik fight, the knockdown in the Cunningham fight?
The lackluster showing in the Otto Valine fight.
We're supposed to judge Alexander Usyk based on how he looked in the Chisora fight. It's only right that we judge Tyson Fury based on those fights.
Is he on to something? Is Steve Cunningham really a better fighter than Alexander Usyk?
If he is, I don't know what that's based on. Steve Cunningham, a two-time IBF cruiserweight champion. He never saw himself become a champion at heavyweight, let alone a unified champion like Alexander Usyk. He didn't have the same success that Usyk has had as either a cruiserweight or a heavyweight. So if he's somehow supposed to be a better fighter than Alexander Usyk, I really don't know what that's based on, and I don't know how you can verify an annotation like that. The most that I can say is that Tyson Fury is likely doing the name association.
He's doing the thing to where, because he fought the guy before, the guy's supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know, he does it with Deontay Wilder all the time.
Deontay Wilder, who's never been a unified heavyweight champion like Anthony Joshua. He hasn't beaten as many champions at that weight. He's never been a two-time heavyweight champion like Anthony Joshua, a unified champion like Usyk, like Ruiz, but beating him is supposed to be this monumental achievement.
There is no quantifiable metric.
Hyperbole in association with that fight. It simply cannot be quantified, and the same applies to Steve Cunningham. Steve was a good fighter in his day, a good cruiserweight.
Yeah, he was a good cruiserweight. He was a two-time IBF cruiserweight champion.
But I can't agree with that annotation. I have no reason to believe that Steve Cunningham was somehow a better fighter than Alexander Usyk when he didn't do his campaign as a cruiserweight what Alexander Usyk did. Not only did he unify all the titles, he did so in hostile territory. Every single time, every single belt he ever won, he won it in the other guy's backyard, and he kept doing that as a heavyweight.
Do you know how hard it is to get a fair shake as the away fighter, fighting in the other guy's backyard?
You know how decisive the victory has to be for you to win a decision against the cash cow like Anthony Joshua?
On his home turf, on his home soil, when you're the away fighter.
Now, I don't know if this is Tyson Fury's way of trying to get into Alexander Usyk's head, but I've said it before. Those mind games, all that stuff we saw in the Wilder fight, it's not going to work with Usyk because Usyk is a realist. He's a family guy, he's centered, and he's not an egomaniac.
He's a consummate professional who's not sat around drinking his own Kool-Aid thinking he's God's gift of boxing.
So I don't think any of these mind games, if that's what this stuff is, I don't think any of it's going to work. I think it's going to fall on deaf ears.
He can say whatever he wants and people can react to it however they want, and I don't think anything of it.
Has no bearing on the actual fight.